My programme started in 2002, a year after I'd graduated from John Moores University in Business Information Systems. I'd spent that year after graduating at the Cooperative Group on a graduate job. I'd been working with the pension fund, and I'd also on my degree I'd had a year's experience at GlaxoSmithKline. But when the opportunity came up to apply for a role, a KTP associate position with Arena Housing and Liverpool John Moores University, what struck me was the opportunity, the sort of almost the clear blue page, the clear blue sky, to be able to go in and run a project for myself. So at Arena, let's just talk a little bit about the programme that I was on. Arena at the time in 2002 were a very new company. They'd been formed as a result of a merger of two equal-sized social landlords. So predominantly what we call general needs housing for let in the UK, in the northwest of the UK, head office in Liverpool. They had about 15,000 properties, with roughly half of the funding for those properties coming from social housing grant and housing benefits. They had about 500 employees and a turnover of roughly 40 million. At that time, there was huge pressure from the government for housing associations to review their services and the way that they deliver them. And rents levels had just been capped, so there was no way of creating the additional capital or additional revenue to reinvest in improving these services. What Arena had approached Liverpool John Moores University for was to come up with a method where they could go through a review, a consultation process, where they could involve all of the stakeholders in their business in reviewing these services and adding value for money in the way that they approach their delivery of service. And during my KTP programme, we were tasked with carrying out a huge cultural change in the way that the organisation looked at itself and the way that it engaged with its residents through innovative approaches, not just technology, but in ways of engaging with people and getting their thoughts on how a business should be run. Obviously, for those of you who are familiar with the programme, it had a number of tangible benefits that we were expected to deliver, financial benefits. And my programme's target was for £1 million worth of efficiency savings in terms of delivering improvements to the business, whilst increasing resident satisfaction. The way we delivered this was through a series of what we called comprehensive service reviews. Now, there's not much different to what housing associations do today in terms of demonstrating that they've challenged themselves, that they've consulted with residents, and that they've made improvements to their service. I think at that time, though, it was a real uncertainty about how you go about doing this kind of thing, and a real temptation for housing associations to go out to blue-chip consultancy and spend lots of money on really stuff that was a standard approach that anybody could do. And that's in effect what we did with Arena Housing Association. 2 years since completing the programme, I'd become a company director. I was on a salary that was three times greater than the cooperative graduate scheme that I'd come from. I probably had 4 times the skills on my CV that I had before I started, and I was probably infinitely more employable. The KTP programme is a far superior option for recent graduates to take up than a graduate scheme in a large organisation. I'm just going to finish up by going back to the theme of leadership. There is a trend within industry today to develop the leadership development programme. This is a scheme where you identify some of your more talented managers and put them together and train them in leadership. There's obviously different academic theories about whether this is a good or a bad approach, but I've just been through a programme with Northern Rail. It was a programme run by the Real World Group, and it was a fantastically well-run programme with very sound academic principles. But I ended up sort of alienating a lot of my colleagues on this programme because I became the Bandcamp know-it-all who'd done a lot of these things before in terms of the negotiation skills, the persuasion skills. What really sums up KTP is that they're 6 years ahead of some of the big businesses in terms of the ideas, the thinking about leadership. And that's what you get on this kind of programme. You get the innovation, the innovative ideas well in advance. But you're also allowed to develop in a controlled environment with the framework that the business has got, and you're allowed to flourish. So I'm extremely grateful for those opportunities, the opportunities that the KTP programme's given me, and the toolkit that I've been able to develop as a result. And I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that scheme. Thanks very much for your time.
Can you just give a couple of pointers to the potential business leaders of tomorrow that we have sitting here today as to what you think the main issues are about leadership that you would highlight?
Okay. I think the first thing when you're going into a new organisation to do a KTP programme is you've got to spend probably roughly 50% of the programme, 6 months or a year, just listening. Going around within the business, listening to what people have got to say, absorbing almost like a sponge the culture, the current culture of the organisation, how people think, how people feel. Because what this enables you to do later on in the project, when you're actually into the implementation phase and you're coming up with the ideas and you're presenting to a company your concepts, your ideas for delivery to bring about the change, you've got all the little hooks that you've developed. You know, you've met the guy who changes the water cooler and heard what he thinks about it, but you've also met the chief executive, and you're really clear on what his vision is and where he's going, because you're going to need all of those ideas and all those hooks to blend into your perception and where you want to drive the company forward. So I think that the key thing for me is just being that sponge and being able to listen.
Thank you, James. And one last point. We want KTP to be really attractive and to attract the best graduates in the UK and around the world. We're really glad that you chose KTP as a vehicle for your career development. How would you sell it to other graduates?
I'd probably go back and talk about the innovation and the leading edge thinking, because people want to be different and they want to have the latest ideas, and it's like having the latest iPod or the Nintendo Wii, you know, that sort of new type of toolkit that's going to make you stand out from the crowd. But I'd also ask, you know, where do you want to go? I mean, do you want to go and work in an organisation where there's a set rules and procedures about your own personal development, or do you want to tailor it for yourself? Do you want to be able to go into a company and shape a programme that you've got total control over, or do you want someone else to do it for you?